I want to tell you about a new podcast called Amuse News. Publishing multiple days a week, Amuse News is your source for food news, interviews from around the food world, and more. On the show, we'll be engaging with food storytellers, from chefs to advocates to people working in the field, and many more. Find Amuse News wherever you get your podcasts. Amuse News is a destination for everyone who's looking for a new, insightful look into the world of food.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
I'm Lou Bank.
And I'm Greg Benson.
And this is an ad for Ancestral Agave Syrup, the critically acclaimed award-winning syrup that helps gringo bartenders better make margaritas, Negronis,
Lou, hold up. Wait, are you just...
fashions?
This is how you start your podcast.
What?
It's not an ad for Ancestral Agave Syrup.
Well, of course it is. I'm just cutting costs by not paying writers to make something new. I'm just using an old script.
You pay writers?
Is that some kind of jab?
No, I'm just saying that...
What are you saying?
Well, look, we've got this amazing syrup that's made in an ancestral manner, cooked down from the sap of the agave, harvested the way these families would to make pulque. It's a quality product. It deserves a quality presentation.
Yeah, okay, hang on. Ancestral agave syrup is made by real families following traditional methods. Unlike the industrial Blue Weber syrup you get everywhere else, Ancestral is cooked down from agua miel, harvested from Salmiana in Hidalgo, Mexico. It is the grade A Vermont maple to the sticky diner syrup you've been using for your cocktails. Ingredients matter, both in how your cocktail tastes and how you treat the earth. Ancestral is better for both. Is that good?
Sure. Or maybe confusing instead of cheesy. Look, just visit ancestralagave.com to learn more and to order your world-class agave syrup today.
And we'll call that a wrap. Catch you next ad, Greg.
Hasta pronto?
Ancestral Agave Syrup. Available online at ancestralagave.org and wherever Greg and Lou are able to coerce store owners into carrying it.
So you don't shun the devil with your rock and roll load. Knows that country music's gonna save your soul. The devil runs his groove in them rhythm and blues that sound. It's gonna get you son in the end.
Welcome back to The Speakeasy. I'm Damon Boelte.
I'm Sother Teague.
And I'm Greg Benson.
Hey, guys.
Greg, where are you at this week? You're not at home.
I'm not at home. No, if you're seeing this on video, you can see that this is not my usual setup. I'm in Phoenix. Get it? Got a nice little urn here with the Phoenix on it to illustrate this point. Mm-hmm. Join the Patreon. Anyway, yes, I'm in Phoenix. I'm going to be in Tucson this weekend for Agave Heritage Fest. Going to be slinging some ancestral agave syrup, talking to some people, probably sampling. And
that's
some
the stuff you're making with Lou Bank, right?
That's correct. Yes, exactly. That's the stuff that we
plug
make.
yourself, Greg. You know, it's your show too.
It's a slow roll. All right, you gotta reel the fish in. So anyway, as you pointed out, yes, that is the stuff that I make with Lou Bank, and it was actually obliquely featured in an article in Punch that came out this past week about the No Gave movement, which I think is really interesting. And I know normally we like to open the show bantering a little bit about something that's been in the news, and then we bring our guest in. But I actually think we should bring our guest in right now because he is in fact, many ways the star of this article. So we're going to bring him in right now. Mm-hmm. We have Max Reese from Mirte in the Los Feliz neighborhood of Los Angeles joining us. Max, so good to see you, man. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, dude.
I'm excited. Long-time listener, so excited to be a part of it.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Yeah. Dude, first of all, congratulations, I want to say, on Meditate. It's like, dude, it's I haven't been yet, but I've just like seen a bunch of the press stuff about it, and like it's freaking gorgeous, man. And it's big.
Yeah.
Which is something us New Yorkers aren't really too used to. But I live in California now, so I'm trying to stretch out. But yeah, I can't wait to come check it out, man. I'm very familiar. Well, I used to be very familiar with that neighborhood, going on like 25 years. So it's kind of interesting to see a place like that there. It's like, oh man, I'm just excited. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, we're really excited. It's been a real labor of love, but people have been appreciating it, and we're busy, man. So it's great. Like even through the writer strikes and everything, we were slammed. So we've been blessed with business, and I think we're doing cool stuff over there. So I'm glad that that's getting amplified.
Yeah, well, tell me a little bit about some of that cool stuff that you're doing. Tell me kind of what the underpinning philosophy of Mirate is, and kind of what you're trying to accomplish over there.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So I ran a agave program in a place called Gracias Madre for about 6.5 years. I was really excited to build it. It was all agave spirits, and we had modifiers from anywhere. We could throw some Tempest Fusion in there. We could do whatever we wanted. And Mirame, which was the former sister restaurant of Mirate, actually went in there. They opened in Beverly Hills. And when they had opened, I was like, whoa, these guys are doing really cool stuff. I watched they were smaller and more focused. My last program was huge. My new program is huge too. Which is hilarious because I've been like craving a small, more intimate bar, but I keep getting thrust into these beasts. But that's okay. So yeah, I went there and I was really impressed by what they were trying to do. And then a little something called the global pandemic happened. And by the time I went back to Mirame, a lot of what they had set out to do had kind of fallen to the wayside, and they had kind of gone into survival mode. So when I came over, I talked to Matt and Josh, who are the owners of Mirate, and we're the owners of Mirame. They asked me if basically I wanted to come on after I had Las Gracias Madre. And honestly, I had kind of been like, maybe I wasn't going to be in the agave space anymore, which is really unfortunate because that's like my lifeblood. That's what I do. And having a famous Mexican chef be like, I want you to represent me on the beverage side was huge for me. Just because I was kind of get imposter syndrome a little bit, being a gringo in that space. But I think my heart's in the right place, and I know that I'm supporting people worth supporting. So basically, I went over there to start Mirate, and my goal was to take everything that I saw that they had wanted to do at Mirame and bring it back. Because like for me, it's like, if I was an owner, I would want to be like the dude I'm hiring on to do my beverage program. I would want to just like, it should read like a love letter to like the dream that they started out with. So rather than, LA, we have a lot of really good agave bars. So, and also one of my back bar that I built over 6.5 years was still around and existing. That's a library. So I was like thinking, I was like, man, okay, so I'm competing literally with myself because my back bar still exists. The library exists, maybe not the librarian, but that collection still is there. And then also we have Madre Mezcaleria, which there's, I think, 4 locations now in LA, but they have the largest collection in the United States of mezcal. So, it's like, okay, so what do we do to distinguish ourselves from these things? Because Madre should be the best mezcal bar. It's Oaxacan owned, so you know what I mean? It should be, that's indicative of this guy's culture and his love for his culture. So, and when we're looking at Gracias Madre and lots of Madres, but, so I decided, hey, you know what, rather than just doing a program that's highlighting agave distillate, let's do one that's actually just highlighting more like Mexico in general. Because ultimately at my last job, we were selling, just Tommy's margaritas, we were selling over 1,000 a day. And at the end of the day, it's like, okay, if we have people come in and we have them drink the amount that we want them to drink to be a successful business, ultimately sustainability is now a portion of the conversation. So yeah, basically what we started now is like, we only carry Mexican spirits, everything from Mexican rum, whiskey, we have Mexican sake. About a third of our back bar I'm bringing across, third of our back bar you can't get anywhere else in the United States. I guess I'll leave it at that. So a lot of basically no filler, but it's just a lot more curated. We want people to come in, we want people to drink a bunch of rum, like Oaxacan rum, and because it's more sustainable. We want people to explore other spirits from Mexico, other aspects of that culture, and then drink some neat mezcal, right? So it's a bit more of a curated experience, I'd say, which
I love the difference between like show of strength, right? Like I'm going to have every possible bottle that I can have versus that curated model, which is, I'm going to have, obviously I'm going to dive into the category, but I don't have to have every single bottle. I have to have the bottles that I want to show you, that I want to teach you about, that I want to highlight for their sustainability or how they treat their families or how they treat the neighborhood in general, the communities, et cetera. I kind of run down that road myself. How are you finding that? I mean, obviously you're getting a lot of accolades, so you're getting a lot of press, and I know that being a darling of the press doesn't always mean you're the darling of the public. How is the public responding?
Really well, honestly. So like what I prided myself in at my last job was we were in the middle of West Hollywood at a time when nobody knew what mezcal was really, and especially to an audience that especially did not care. We're talking about the celebrity tequila swilling crowd, status drinkers, I'll call them.
Sure.
So I specialized in changing people's minds over about 6.5 years, and opening in Los Feliz. It was great. So the neighborhood just came in and they were just about it. When we first opened, my old counterpart, Zach, he was my bar manager. We were literally floor somming for mezcal every night. And it was just like the amount of steps I would get on my notifications afterward. I was just like, this is nuts. It was just building custom flights, pouring cool stuff. People come in curious and it's awesome. It's, we actually have a lot of like cannabis money in that neighborhood. So a lot of kind of like young, open-minded people with expendable income. So we'll have these couples that come in that seem very just like chill, unsuspecting, and they'll come in and they'll drink like $600 worth of neat pours, and that's just like Tuesday night, So it's really cool, and luckily it's like I think the press has done a good job of not just focusing on cocktail accolades. It's been kind of like I think they've been getting what we're putting down. So people come in with a clear expectation. And don't get me wrong. I'd say our biggest downfall is we have a beautiful tree in the middle of the restaurant. And every time a viral TikTok video comes out of like, check out this hidden hideaway in Los Feliz, like blah, 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 we get a strong push of people that don't really understand what we're doing. But, that's okay. That's my job, right?
Yeah, it's the roller coaster ride of Instagram and
then you get to change minds too. Then you get to be kind of an educator. I mean, I'm sure it's not everybody who saw the tree on TikTok and came in expecting, the Rainforest Cafe is going to be into doing neat pours of Oaxacan rum, but I'm sure enough of them are that it makes it kind of a fun, experience for you, as I believe you describe yourself as an edutainer, right?
Right. Yeah. Edutainment's kind of how we focus on our style of service there. Yeah, it's all about storytelling. I personally don't think it's just, I don't know. It's like if you're selling someone a $25 pour of mezcal, right? It's like some of my favorite stuff. I don't know. Mazonte, right? Awesome. Like great story. And it sells it, right? But outside of that, it's like someone might try it and it might be lactic and weird and, not what they were expecting. But by the time you end up getting through an epic story talking about this family and their process and the cultural history that defines their production style, it's like at that point $25 is steal, right? It's like so I mean we definitely edutain. We educate as we build hospitality around education. It's like I mean we don't push it on them, but
As a person who's doling out that edutainment, where are you gathering that information? Are you traveling down and meeting with these families and visiting these areas as often as you can? And if so, talk a little bit about that, what that process is like.
I mean, the first time I went down to Oaxaca, I went down with a large brand that I will exempt the name from. But I showed up and very quickly realized that smoke and mirrors was a big aspect of the experience. It was kind of like, hey, I'm turning the corner and they're like, go, 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 now load the oven. And, it was actually really funny. We were driving through San Balsazar on this trip, I remember. And the brand that's not available in Mexico had blatantly like paid these families to like put their bottles on their altar because they were like driving, like pointing out, being like, hey, look at that. See, they love us here. They provide jobs and all this stuff. And I was like, after I left that experience, I loved it. It was amazing, but I was like, I'm not getting the full picture. And I went back 14 times that year to Oaxaca. And I really got my base, my staple. And then now, I mean, I go to all sorts of states. I go to Michoacan a lot. Jalisco is one of my absolute favorite places to go visit mezcal production. It's also great because you can juxtapose tequila, obviously, which is great for my staff. But I always wind up going to the same place. Just I'm like, I go to Cascaween all the time. It's great. So I mean, basically, it's just all about developing relationships with these producers, the families. Finding, we're not brand focused really. I mean, there's curations that I think, you logically would call a brand. But we've developed very close relationships with a lot of these curators, and it's like my job to visit them and do meticulous research through them, and not just show up on a brand trip and drink a bunch of mezcal, which is fun, but it's showing
Sure.
up and actually like spreading the word, learning from these families, and not just showing up to have some drinks, which is, again, I find like easy distraction for a lot of people in the bartending community. Understandably so, it's delicious. But,
for sure.
Yeah, but
well, Max, listen, I have to ask, like, from the business side, a lot of our listeners are bartenders out there themselves, and I hear the hairs on my neck stood up when you said you visited 14 times in a year. How does a working bartender make that happen? Are you subsidized by the brands and the families you go see? They're typically pretty small in this niche. Are you subsidized by the business, and how do you like justify that cost, if so?
I mean, I got very lucky, so I couldn't do that now, truthfully. I opened a new spot. We're busy. My time away is seldom these days. But last time when I took over Gracias Madre, I had taken over that place when they had been fully operating and chugging along for like 2.5 years, 3 years. So by the time I took it over, they were already a well-oiled machine, and they were also doing a ton of volume. I took apart that machine and built a new machine, but still the infrastructure of the business was there. But luckily, it's like the cost once you're in Oaxaca is very minimal. So I would just cover my flight. I would get down there, and kind of everything else would be, sometimes I would go on a very self-curated trip, in which case, yes, I pay for everything. It's great, but you make friends down there. I don't know. Aziz Cortez, who's amazing. He does the Dishabay mezcals, formerly El Hogorio. He's great, and he has like a Airbnb that he just puts up bartenders in. So it's like I've gotten lucky a few times and just been down there and been like, hey, what's going on? He's like, I have a place for you to stay. Go ahead. And after that, I'm just paying for food and transport. And
Sure.
again, it's that's chill for me. I live in LA, where if I go to a bar, I'm probably spending $120 or something. So getting to go down there. But I think it's an important investment. Yes, it is a monetary investment, but like, I don't know. I just got to do it. I mean, hilariously enough, I didn't go out to New York for the first time until this year, because every time I would look at flying out to New York, I would be like, or I could go to Mexico.
Right.
So yeah, yes.
You go where the passion takes you, right?
Twice, maybe.
Yeah, you can go to Mexico 14 times, or you can go to New York twice.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
That's how the metrics work out.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I loved New York. I had a great time. I think it's just about prioritizing my resources, because 14 times was a lot. And that definitely came from a place of privilege that was defined by my job at the time, allowing me to leave that frequently, monetarily leaving that frequently. But again, it's just like the best investment I could have ever made.
Sure, you're investing in yourself in a lot of ways, right? You're educating yourself, and you're seeing things, and this hopefully is bringing back dollars and butts and seats who want to come to the curation that you've created at the restaurant and the bar. I'm just curious, and I'm not putting anybody's feet to the fire when I ask this, but does this enhancement of your skill, knowledge, and ability translate to any dollar recognition, compensation from your company? And if not, should you maybe ask them?
No. I definitely think it does.
Like, if one of my bartenders visited Italy 14 times and came back with new information and knowledge about Amaro every single time, I'd be like, dude, I owe you some money.
Sure. Yeah. No. I mean, I feel very lucky with my current spot. I came on and had vocalized that I was going to be opening my own bar, et cetera, which I had been looking for spots, and ownership at Mirate was like, yeah, we're super happy to have you on. And, hopefully we develop a rapport with each other. But so by the time you are opening that, we can be a part of that. But honestly, after we opened up trying to be a restaurant, but with like more emphasis on alcohol. And we always kind of said that the other sister restaurant was a restaurant with really good drinks, and that this was a bar with really good food. And that definitely landed. So I think after about 4 months, ownership realized that like if I left, it would not be great, because we had defined the establishment so much by my input and my curation. So after about 4 months, ownership bought me in as a part owner to keep me around, which is amazing.
All right, there we go.
Yeah, I didn't have to ask. I didn't do anything. They just sat me down. They were like, we want you to be here. We want to keep you being here. And yeah,
I mean, game recognized game,
yes,
right?
yeah,
So they recognized that they had something in their hands that they wanted to hold on to, so they made it. They pinned it down.
yeah.
They put a ring on
They
it.
put a ring on it, exactly. And honestly, it's like I'm a completionist. There's no way I would have been able to leave after that amount of time. I love my team. I love what we built there, and there's no way I would have been able to just step away. But that's not very common that people just offer you money when they don't have to. So it was really nice just to have someone stick around. But other than that, it's like, honestly, our trips are invaluable. I just took the general manager to check out the Cañada region of Oaxaca for rum production. And we ended up, we bought 4 barrels of rum from them when we were up there. So like our well rums are sourced just for us. While we were up there, we discovered that the family was making a sugarcane based vodka for locals, and we're starting to white label that and bring that in as our like custom well vodka, which I'm usually not a fan of vodka, but I'm like, I'm going to sell that. It's amazing. It's regenerative. It's got a good story. It costs more than like, most vodkas, but at the same time, if you're walking into my establishment and you're drinking vodka, you might as well pay for it and get something cool.
Right.
And then, fruit eau de vie. We got a ton of fruit eau de vie on that trip. So we get a lot of cool stuff, and it's not just, and it honestly translates to the establishment, which is great.
Yeah, can we rewind a little bit and talk a little bit about? You mentioned earlier, you've got a lot of things that are quote only available at your spot. Does this mean that you're suitcasing stuff, or does this mean you've got like some kind of pipeline that? I don't know. Explain.
Yeah, truthfully, so we, some of it is, suitcased. Oh man, I'm gonna get shut down, aren't I?
But that's not sustainable for like putting on the menu. I can't go suitcasing stuff, that's on menu. So that's just stuff that's on the side. But right?
Kinda. I got some photos I can show you later, but I'm in San Diego right now.
That's for the Patreon. Hold that for the Patreon.
I'm in San Diego right now, at this moment. Which is really close to TJ.
Yeah, it's a stone's throw away. Yeah, you're in San Diego for Bartender's Weekend, right?
Yes, yeah. So we're here for Bartender's Weekend. We just did a pop-up, which is really exciting. But like yesterday, I woke up and I was like, I want tacos, and I drove and got some Stingray tacos in Tijuana, and I have a Century Pass, so I got back across the border in about 5 minutes. So yeah, I used to suitcase a lot, but now what I'll do is that when I go down there, I'll just mail a ton of bottles to myself in Tijuana, and then I just go pick them up, which is awesome. So, I brought back 3 5-gallon gasoline jugs full of fruit brandy that I had mailed over there, and we had a pretty badass Negroni on the menu for a while, and yeah, it's pretty good. So a lot of it is suitcased. I try not to put everything I'm suitcasing on the menu, truthfully, just because I don't want to put really a target on my back. But if you ever come to my bar and you look, and you'll see some water bottles on the back bar, these giant Demijohns, and I'm like, it's not on the menu, but yeah, you can have some for sure. But other than that, honestly, a big portion for me supporting these producers and that do send me back with some cool stuff in my suitcase. I make sure to really support them here on the U.S. side, because that's big, right? Because you got to make sure you're supporting them and through their distributor, and that you're creating value for them. So I do a lot of batch buys, like even our well, I'm super proud of. So we source our well mezcal from Victor and Emmanuel Ramos in Mihualan, Oaxaca. They make us about 5 batches a year, roughly, and that operates exclusively as our well mezcal. Normally, if you were to engage in that kind of relationship with the family, they would, they did and normally would ask if you want them to blend all of those batches together. That way you have a consistent flavor profile throughout the year and consistent ABV. Not what we do. We were like, listen, don't change a thing. That's my job, right? I'm the one who should be worried about cocktail consistency.
Yeah,
I want an accurate representation of what you guys make. So yeah, we get 5 batches a year directly from them. It's really cool. I always say it's, it's like, I think it's really funny how you go to these bars and they have like these beautiful back bars, right? Just like full of just like this insane curation. And then you're like, yeah, but like 95% of your business goes to the stuff in the well that you don't see. And ultimately that's where you're doing the most good or most support, right? And then also like, I think you should judge an establishment by their well. Like, it's like what everyone walks through the door gets. It's like, I always say, if your friend works at Disneyland and you get to go and you skip all the lines, you don't go, oh man, I love Disneyland, there's no lines. You go like, that was special. I got to have a unique special experience, you know, because I
Mm-hmm.
was allowed to have that special experience. So like the idea that someone would walk into my bar and have to upgrade and that's what I want to be judged by. Like, no. I'm like, judge me by my
I thought
well.
you were gonna
So
say
we
like
have-
you don't go to Disneyland and not drink what's in the well.
Oh, sure.
But,
Yeah.
I thought that you were like gonna take it some really weird. But yeah, no, I get it, man. Like so, but and it's kind of what I like about this idea with your well mezcal is that it's a really easy way. Sorry, all of our friends who work in the booze industry like we do. It's a really easy way to shut people down who keep coming at you trying to be in your well. It's like, you know what? That's cool, man. I love it. We'll put it on the back bar. But we have our own custom, custom picked, hand picked barrels or batches of mezcal. So there's for me working on all the different sides, from being a bar owner and buyer versus like a distributor sales, like ambassador. It's like I can't argue with that, man. If I came in trying to sell you something to put in the well. So, but there is, I love what you're saying about that, because there's also like the utilitarian kind of aspect of it, of like bringing something really special to people that doesn't cost, that's not on the top shelf, and obviously you said before that you have some people come in and drink $600 worth of neat pours of mezcal, but like, to me, I'm more excited about, like you were saying before as well, telling that story. It's like that story to me is already that I haven't even tasted that mezcal yet, but I already love it,
Yeah.
just because so much more attention and care went into it. I love that. So cool.
Yeah. It's a curated experience at an introductory price point and level. It's also really great for our servers. We do invest a lot into our staff training, like a lot. We do a half-hour pre-service every day where we go over mezcal, etc., which we have to if we want to sell good mezcal, right? But it is really cool because I'm always telling the servers when they're like, what should I recommend? I'm always like, our well, like gain their trust.
Yeah.
Like don't, like, it's like, why? Yeah, you can sell them a $25 pour, but
I think what you're driving at is like, it's sort of an oddity in our field where the thing if you open up a bar, the thing you're most embarrassed by is your first pour. Right. And that shouldn't be the case.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the case at my bar or Damon's bar, but I think that generally speaking, if you have a well, then you're kind of like, that's the stuff I'm most embarrassed by, but that's the stuff that I'm selling first. So that seems really backwards, right?
Yeah, it's a little silly.
Yeah, I love the approach. I also really appreciate your stance on telling the family not to blend so that you'd have consistency and to quote, worry about it on your end as the mixologist to make it taste, good and consistent on your end. I think that's really genius, and certainly puts a highlight on the families that are making this stuff.
Yeah.
In your notes here, I see a little bit about a lot about zero waste. I want to talk a bit about that and tie it in. I think today I'm very focused on the business side, so I want to tie it in a little bit with the business, right? You keep mentioning the volume that you're doing. How big is that volume, and how do you manage doing zero waste with high volume? Because I feel like those two are in conflict with one another. When you say, for instance, Trash Tiki was making all of their, not all, but they were making enough of their orgeat from almond or rather avocado pits.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, that means they got to make a lot of guacamole.
Sure.
Right. And if they're not making enough guacamole, they don't have enough of those pits. So suddenly it just doesn't work anymore. Right. So how do you approach that?
I guess I think zero waste is a little tricky. I'd say we were more minimal waste. There's waste. I wish there wasn't, and we confront it as we find it. I would mainly say that because of probably kitchen collaboration. I'd say that our recipes are zero waste. When I'm creating a recipe from the ground up, I am doing it with intention and I'm making sure that we're minimizing any waste. But at the end of the day, I'm not in the kitchen making sure that they're not throwing some things away. They are pretty diligent about that, and we obviously try our best, but I'm sure there's some stuff that slips through the cracks. So I guess I would just say more when we're designing cocktails, like that's where we attack it from. During the pandemic, I was crushing. I was first guy that wanted to return to work, and I had a bunch of goals when the pandemic happened. I remember being like, I want to get really good at making to-go cocktails. I don't want to do it like everyone else is doing it, where we put a citrus cocktail in a bottle and we just sell it, right. And we're like, please support us. It's like, no. I want to create a experience. So what we ended up doing was getting really good at like making force carbonated canned cordialized cocktails and things like that. So all of our citrus production in house, that's how we attack it. It's like, cool, this is our lime juice. We're going to use it for 2 days. After that, we're going to cordialize it and we're going to put that into our slushies, or we're going to, clarify it and, acidify our grapefruit juice, and we're going to use that for our Paloma. And it's just all about just kind of like, what do we do after this? It's not like, hey, we only use fresh juice. It's like, what do we do when the juice is no longer fresh? Like, and also like the important part about that is it can't negatively affect our guest. It has to be a win for the establishment, a win for the guest. And that's it, so it's like, we're not just using it to use it. It has to be with purpose and intention. So yeah, it's like I tell my batchers, I'm like, if there's anything that you're throwing away, write it down and we'll make something out of it. When we first opened, we were straining out our michelada mix, and we were turning it into the remnants into like sorbet, cool. Which was super fun, and it's like, when you start having fun with it, you can really have fun with it. And that's my favorite is for my batch team. Just like, I'm like, cool, what are you throwing away? What do you think we should do with it? Let's go. So we do a lot of fermentation. Like if you come in, we do what's called we call an M system. It's like a tiered VIP system. So if you come in twice, you get flagged in our system in a good way. And then after
maybe
that,
not us.
Yeah,
if we come in twice, there may be a problem.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah. But yeah, you get a free greeting, right? So we do lots of house ferments. We have like tepache. That's my favorite, just to greet people with. We have tepache on tap. So we'll greet you with a tepache. And that's something we're upcycling pineapple waste into, which is dope. And it's like, it literally costs the establishment. We pay for sugar and spice. Everything else is stuff that you would normally throw away. We were doing colonche for a while, which was like it's a fermented tuna or prickly pear beverage from Zacatecas or San Luis Potosi. And it was like a dying art form, and we ended up trying to reprise, and it's like fermented prickly pear, which is really cool. You slow down the fermentation with rum. You can add sugar if you want. Some regions do, some regions don't. Some people add spices, but we have all these ferments that we're using in-house out of things that would normally be going bad. And we splash people with it, and it's super fun. It's just like, cool, how can we turn this into something? And like, luckily, it's like Mexican culture. There is a lot of that because they're, notoriously a culture that is not fond of waste, because a lot of them are coming from, they got like brutally colonized, and a lot of them have not reached a level of, have not escaped poverty in a lot of regions until more recently. So there's a lot.
Right, so it's not waste. It's in those cases, it's not waste. It's scarcity, right?
Yes.
They're using everything they can use because they don't have anything else.
Yeah, exactly. And some of it's because that's something they did for a long time, and now it's just a part of their culture and it's ingrained. Some of it's because the water wasn't good and you had to use fermentation to make sure you didn't get sick when you were drinking things. And it is very ingrained in the culture. So it's pretty cool because it's kind of low hanging fruit, because usually the culture has done the work for me, which is great, and it's, plus it's cool. It's like, we'll do, I don't know, we're doing tejuino right now. It's like fermented masa beverage, and it's like, there's all these things where I'm just like, okay, cool. Like once we do a little bit of a deep dive, it's so easy for us to be able to identify an easy way to upcycle waste, because as a culture, they're not very wasteful. Oh man, I'm so excited about this. So we have like a pulque program that we started, which I'm
about pulque.
Yeah, I've gotten super lucky.
Cool. Nice.
I've developed some relationships with some people in LA where I can get pulque fresh, which is very uncommon. Normally pulque, travels a few days from its source where they're serving it, and it becomes pretty disgusting. And it turns, that's why they do a pulque curado in a lot of spots where they'll blitz it with fruit and things like that to hide the fact that it's kind of gone over the hill. But I was thinking about that. I was like, okay, cool. So how am I going to bring on pulque and have it be sustainable? Because ultimately I don't want to throw this away. So we are now I found a guy that has been making pulque locally, which is crazy to me, for 35 years. And he's from Michoacan. Yeah, he's great. I met him because he was selling, he takes like fresh garbanzo beans in the shell, like edamame style, and you just roast them and then you toss them in either Valentine or Tajín. And he was selling it by this, like, in the Piñata district, which is like Little Mexico here. It's amazing. And I was walking by and I looked down and I saw these like jugs, and I was just like, that pulque? And he's like, you know what pulque is? Awesome. So he makes agua miel, which is like younger pulque that's like almost no alcohol. He does pulque, and then he does tepache out of pulque, so no pineapple. He just takes pulque and then you add piloncillo and spices and you let it ferment into like a higher ABV tepache, which is really cool. So I met him, and we ended up. So now we're getting into a relationship where, because he only sells pulque on the weekends, so Saturday, Sunday. So he's doing his fermentation with it being ready on those 2 days, which is where there's the most foot traffic where he's selling it. So now he's dropping it off for us weekly. But I was like, so we're putting it on a nitro tap. And when we put it on nitro, the nitrogen,
Oh my God.
yeah. So the nitrogen actually slows down the fermentation enough because you're, displacing all the CO2, so it won't develop at the same rate. So we've been managing, we experimented with it, and then sure enough, it slows it down enough to where it's servable all week. So our once a week delivery is now awesome. And then actually, so I found out that in Oaxaca, when they didn't have access to fresh citrus, what they would do is for their ceviches, they would take their pulque and they would ferment it into vinegar, and they would use that to cure their ceviches. So we have it's rolling out this next week, but I've been spending the past 6 months developing a vinegar mother out of pulque. And we have a pulque Gibson on the menu where we're pickling onions in this pulque vinegar. So we're like, it's pretty fun just because my program is like, sometimes it's like centrifuge and all first carbonation, and then other times it's like, let's just stick it in a freaking sauerkraut fermenter and like, let's see what happens. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
time will do its job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is, this is making me thirsty. These pretzels are making me thirsty. I would love to visit, but this also kind of brings us full circle back to what we started talking about. Now that we're kind of talking about, pulque and some other agave stuff, I wanted to talk to you about no agave, because when people, if you polled a random sampling of American citizens, I bet you that if they think about like, what is the number one thing that you know about like drinking culture south of the border, it would be some sort of agave-based thing, either mezcal or tequila. And, obviously that's a big part of your program as well. And yet for this one very fundamental part of this sort of agave drinking experience, you're actually moving away from using the stuff that's commercially available. So talk to me about your thought process there, and talk to me about what you're doing instead of actually using agave syrup in places where you would want to use agave syrup.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the conundrum when we first opened. Was I was like, I don't want to put on an orange liqueur based margarita. I want to put on a Tommy's, especially because in LA, everyone and their mom is like, "Can I have it skinny? Can I have it skinny?" Which doesn't mean anything. I have no idea what that means. It's like, I've had skinny margaritas where homeboy I had this guy that used to bring in his own Splenda, and that's what he would want in his skinny margarita. Some people
it means that when you hand it to them, they want you to say, "Here's your skinny margarita."
Yeah, totally.
That's what.
Do you mind
guilt-free, baby.
Do you mind adjusting the temperature on the AC? Oh, sure. I walked over there. I looked like I did something, and I walked back and I said, "Feel better?" Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean,
power of suggestion, baby.
I straight up tell my servers, I'm like, if you put skinny margarita on a cocktail ticket, we're not going to make it. I go, we have 2 buttons. One says light sweetener, one says no sweetener. I was like, I need to know what you want, So, but yeah, so we wanted to do a Tommy's, and it had been in my thoughts for a long time because agave syrup inherently, at this point of its production, and it's an evolving conversation. It's not sustainable. It's not. Right now, we're not in an agave deficit right now, so it's more sustainable now than it has been in the past. But ultimately, the processes for extracting those sugars, I was not able to find a brand except for there's one called Senor Maguey. Every single one I was able to find is done in a diffuser, and it's pretty funny because you'll be talking to these brands that are like, we don't use diffuser, we're anti-diffuser, and for any of your listeners that don't know, it's just a really efficient method of extracting sugars from agave that I would liken to, instead of like an oven, it would be likening more to like a microwave. And it's not microwave technology. I just meant in terms of its like, efficiencies.
7 minutes in the microwave or an hour in the oven. Do I have 2 baked potatoes? I don't think so.
Yeah, exactly.
I have 2 edible potatoes. They're both edible.
Yes. Yeah. Very different, right? And, we were just like, you'll talk to these brands that are super anti-diffuser production in their tequila, but then they're like also making agave syrup, and it's all done in a diffuser. It's like, it's so funny to me. I'm like, I'm like, why is that different?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, so I don't know. It's like, for me, a diffuser, it's like just shouldn't exist. It's like, I understand that it has possible uses that can be good. And that's like, you know, it's interesting for me to hear like the pitch from, you know, Bacardi when they're talking about the production of Cazadores. I'll mention that brand because I think it's interesting and they do educate and they do get their employees ahead of the conversation. So yes, I'm not a big fan of Cazadores, but it is interesting for me to talk to a giant company that has trained their staff on how to talk about it instead of just hiding it, which I think is cool. But at the end of the day, it's like, yes, you can say all these things and it could be more efficient and it's stretching this thing that's, you know, inherently finite, which is cool. But, you know, it's like, for me, that's like walking into your friend's house and they're counterfeiting money and they're like, no, don't worry, I'm just counterfeiting ones. And you're like, no, that's like, you know, that's like, I don't, what, you know, like the second I walk away, what are you doing?
Right.
You know what I mean? So and there's so much corruption in that field. So I just think like that part of the conversation is just like something I don't want a part of my bar program at all, you know? So it's like, I don't think I deserve to be on a high horse about not supporting diffuser tequilas on my back bar, but then I'm just like funding a bunch of money into that inadvertently through our sweetener. So I went down to Mizonte, which is a really beautiful, I guess it wasn't Mizonte, but some of my favorite mezcal in the world in Guadalajara. They have a bar there two. One's called De La O and one's called Par de Sufrir. And at De La O, they do cocktails and they, instead of using agave syrup, they do, well, I guess it is agave syrup, kind of. They do agua miel reduction. So they basically take the sugar water, the honey water that's not fermented yet, and they reduce it into a syrup. And I tried that for the first time and I was like, whoa, like, okay, so like this is what this tastes like when you're not running it through all this processing and all this like chemical additives and, you know, running all these freaking like, you know, hydrochloric acids to like soften the agaves and, you know, turning it into like a flavorless hummingbird food, right? You know, it's like you try it and you're like, oh, they call this agua miel. They call it honey water because it tastes complex. It tastes like honey. This is like a really complex flavor, you know, and it's at the end of the day, we're just homogenizing it into this like neutral sugar. It's not truly neutral, but I meant like, you know, when you try it next to like what it came from to where we're getting it as, it's like, you know, it's like 10% of what it used to be flavor wise.
Sure. It's Mrs. Butterworth's up against real maple syrup.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's corn syrup that's dyed brown or it's the real thing.
Yeah. You know, and at the end of the day, it's like, we need to get closer to that as we can. So my opening bar manager named Zach Sanders, we both decided that we were going to do an agave. So we did some experimenting with it. It's an ongoing conversation. We're always trying to make it better, which I think is really fun and great. Like right now I'm experimenting. So I finally have, when you serve our mezcal pours neat, we give you some strips of roasted agave that we get from Mexico. It's free. We're not selling it. You know, it's on us. Have at it. But I am experimenting now with like taking some of that and we're actually sous videing it in with the syrup to bring like even more of that agave flavor to that, but still using, right now we're doing a blend of orange blossom honey and demerara sugar to create our no agave. But we've also done coconut nectar. Garrett from Sunken Harbor Club actually turned me on to that, which I thought was really cool. So it's an ongoing conversation, you know, it's like, but ultimately it's just about sustainability and getting closer to what that truly is. I mean, it's like I say orange flower or orange blossom honey because we were using just like wildflower honey for a while. And what I didn't realize is that wildflower honey means that's just being sourced by whatever's in season, right? So it's like, it changes throughout the year. It's very inconsistent. So your flavor changes, your color changes. So by choosing a single varietal honey, such as orange blossom, we have a consistent product throughout the year. It also has a little bit of a tip of the hat to, you know, the orange liqueur that used to be in there or in a classic margarita. Yeah, which I think is cool, you know, so it's an ongoing conversation, but ultimately, I think the coolest thing is like we decided to call it no agave. And it's like when people look at our menu and they go like, what is that? It's a conversation starter. And it also, I really think like kind of demonstrates like the amount of thought that goes into our drinks. You know, it's like, even if people don't care, they're just like, okay, you guys are insane. I just want a margarita, whatever. It's like, they still understand that we're doing something cool for them, even if they don't fully comprehend what that is.
Yeah. Or even want it, you know, it doesn't matter. Like, at least they understand that it's happening. And, you know, do good while being bad was the motto of my all charity bar, right? Like, come on in and have a drink, but your money's going to charity.
That's awesome.
You know, so they don't have to know or give a shit that you're doing all the right things. They just know that they're there to have a good time, right? And they're going to be a percentage of those that exist, and that's just fine as well, right? Man, this has been a great conversation, and I'm now really chomping at the bit to come out to see Mirate and meet you face to face. So, I'll have to check your calendar and make sure you're in town and not in Mexico.
Yeah, please.
But like, where can people follow along with everything you're doing and experience the place without having to come out there? You got some social media you want to plug?
I mean, so I kind of do like we do a couple different avenues. So the Mirate Instagram, I'd say that's kind of our more public facing one. It's still great. You get to see everything we're doing. But to put in an example, it's like we touch on like menu descriptors. We try to make it very like, come on in, make it more accessible. And then my personal Instagram is Beer Ghost, and it's a lot of industry memes and stupid stuff like that. But it's those I post more behind the scenes. I don't summarize ingredients in ways that are easy. We do the nitty gritty, and we really, we show you what goes into it. We post a lot of recipes, a lot of behind the scenes, a lot of experimenting, kind of showing what we're doing in the R&D process. Like, I don't know, I've been trying to, like Bar Shinji in New York. I met John and I let him, I'm I think the only bar right now in LA that's using liquid nitrogen. We use it to rinse our glassware and now use it a lot in prep. But so when Shinji's came out here, they did a pop-up at my buddy's bar Thunderbolt, but they were like, we need a place to prep and we need liquid nitrogen. And I was like, yeah, you guys can totally come prep here, but you just gotta let me watch. So I've been reverse engineering their 10-second Ramos or 8-second Ramos, whatever they're calling it. For like, it took me like a month and a half to like fully reverse engineer in a way that made sense, because they have an ultrasonic homogenizer. I do not have that. I would love one. So if anybody's listening that wants to buy me one, please. No, so
Amazon wish list.
Yeah, so it's just fun to like that. Those are the areas where it's like I won't just post like, hey, this is a recipe. It's like, hey, you want to like watch me fail doing this for like 2 months while I'm figuring out how to do this, and it's fun, you get like more into it and you get more engaged, and I do like to post recipes. I'm really not into gatekeeping. Anytime a young bartender asks me for my recipes, or an old bartender, I don't really care. I always say yeah, because
thanks.
I just think gatekeeping is so silly to me. You know what I mean? It's like
the information's out there. Like, you might as well don't be greedy with it. I'm definitely going to hit you up on those Instagram accounts. Yeah. That sounds like a lot of fun. Also, I have there's an agave brand that I think you might be interested in that I've come across that I think you might be wanting to hear about. But we can talk about that later, because
I'm intrigued. No, I'd love to hear more about it.
We'll chat. But for now, that's going to do it for us this week on the Speakeasy. Tune into Heritage Radio Network for a lot more shows just like this one. And remember, we are at the tail end of our 15-year anniversary fundraiser. We're going to have a link in the show notes to where you can help out the network, support a lot of the great programming they do, be entered to win some fun prizes as a result of your time. So definitely check it out. They give us a lot of support. Love to have some of our listeners give some support back. But for now, Max, thank you so much for joining us, and cheers, everybody.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.
So you don't shun the devil with your rock.
The Speakeasy is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network. Food and drink radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.
Hey, are you hungry? Well, you're in luck. Meat and 3 is back for season 16. I'm Taylor Early, and we've got a whole new batch of reporters I am so excited to introduce you to.
Hi, there. I'm Elizabeth Fisher.
Asha McElroy.
Sam Girardi.
Jessica Gingrich.
Hannah from Wisconsin.
I'm a swing dancing audio engineer.
I am a future registered dietitian nutritionist.
I'm from New York, and I love rice and beans.
My favorite food of all time is a shrimp burrito.
I love watermelon.
We've also got a bonus podcast for you called Behind the Internship. 3 of our reporters will take you along to show how they develop stories for this very show, Meat and 3.
Hi, I'm Danielle Flitter, a plant-based chef from Philadelphia, living in Mexico City.
I'm Sophia Hooper. I'm a bartender based in Portland, Maine.
My name is Addison Austin Liu. I am a chef and food journalist from Salt Lake City, Utah, and my favorite food is Peruvian.
Rice and beans.
Hand-drawn noodle soup.
So tune in to enjoy a square meal for your ears. And I hope you saved a little room for dessert.